Are we ready to get? Hi, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the St. Mary's County Library Board of Trustees monthly meeting. I'm Tressa Stetlack, the current president chair of the board. And now I'd like to go around and just introduce everybody that's here, beginning with John.
John Johnston, Vice President.
Judith Wayne, treasurer.
Michael Dunn, trustee.
John Walters, trustee.
Okay, we have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and get started.
Madam President, excuse me, we seem to have a guest. Could we have her introduce herself? Oh, thank you.
Rhonda's going to be getting a hip hip parade.
Oh, okay.
We do have asset strategy coming in today for call it 9:45, and they've been given 15-20 minutes.
Okay, thank you. We get started. Approve the agenda for the day. Excuse me.
Motion to approve the agenda as written.
Thank you, Michael Dunn. Can we have a second and then we'll have a discussion? Okay. We have a second
Second.
discussion, Judith?
You can just fight off the treasurer's report quarterly.
Yeah, thank you. I let that in because in case you wanted to just give us any updates, but in the future, we'll just make sure that that's on a quarterly basis. And you say you can give any updates in new or old business. So thank you, Judith.
And I would like to add at the bottom, and it can be very brief, and a briefing on partner perks.
Partner perks. Morning.
Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda as amended?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Approval of the January 2025 minutes.
I move to approve the January minutes as written.
Thank you, Michael.
Second.
Thank you, Judith. All in favor of approving the January minutes,
Chairman.
John?
Question.
Yes.
Under Roman 5A, 1, Vanguard account lost funds. I'd like to change that to value. We did not lose any of the funds. We did have a value change.
Okay.
5A, 1, the word funds change to value. And under 6A, what is MS Teams?
Microsoft Teams.
Can we spell that out, please, for posterity?
Sure.
Thank you.
All in favor of approving the January 2025 minutes as amended?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Motion carries. Let's see. Approval of the monthly expenses.
Just had a question about two items with the same designation for on the last page. Looks like Maryland Library Association. Said Millie BC and Millie AD. Oh, I'm sorry.
A motion to pass.
So moved.
Thank you, Michael, second. Have a second?
Second.
Okay, now we can have discussion.
Yeah. I just had a question about the two Maryland Library Association items in the last page.
Those are for the Maryland Library Leadership Academy or Institute, I'm sorry, that Brittany and Amy Dickinson were selected for in Sperry.
It's just a program where people who are in some cases newer leaders, but in many cases looking to improve their leadership skills and become more effective library managers, and with any luck ultimately leading to a directorship, because I'm not going to live forever. But the idea is that, good morning, Sharon, how are you today? Thanks for so the idea is just to improve their skills and give them a better idea of how Maryland libraries operate at a higher level than you get through the other program, the LATI program, which is for library associate training.
And it's,
So it's tuition.
yes.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, and it will be paid for by the grant, the staff development grant that we received from the state.
I remember we talked about this last month and it's a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Can I ask why Amy's is more than Brittany's?
Because we had a credit with the Maryland Library Association. We paid for membership for all of our staff, and then Smyrla decided to pay for our membership. So we had a credit with the Maryland Library Association.
And I have a question mostly for staff. Here we are in February, and I don't think I have found where we have been billed for asset strategies quarterly services. Did I miss? What page are you on?
Yeah, they send us quarterly bills.
Got it. There we are. Thank you.
Any other discussion, questions?
Can I ask on page 4, the tech ops specialty vehicles, the 2 plug replacements?
Yeah, go ahead.
We have had issues with the plug itself, plug that retracted into the vehicle. And it was continuously getting stuck. We've taken it to tech ops several times for it to be fixed and it just wasn't working. So we've, and in discussion with them, they said that actually they would recommend switching it. So it was a cord that was in the vehicle and came out to our plug. So now they switched it so that it's a plug into the vehicle and so they switched that.
So this is the charger.
Yes.
Yeah. And that way we don't have to run the generator, which of course is fueled by diesel. And it provides climate control overnight on a really hot day, or more recently, really cold nights. So we can start the vehicle up in the morning and go. And Tech Ops did come down to complete that repair. The good news is that we have a budget line for mobile library maintenance, and it's gotten nowhere near what we were expecting. And we'll look at that in a little while.
If that was defective, shouldn't it be on them?
I don't know that I'd say it was defective. In any case, I don't know that that's a warranted thing. It's been over a year.
We also, we had that discussion with them and really what it is it was built to the specs that were written by our, so it's 2 different companies, the person who created the specs and then the people who built it. It was built by us to the specs. The people who built it recommended the opposite after the fact. So when we had multiple issues, we just decided to go ahead and switch it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, anything else? No questions? All those in favor of approving the monthly expenses? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, Smyrna report, John Johnston.
For our meeting next Tuesday, we have a training session with the Microsoft Teams and SharePoint platform that the Smyrna staff has enable like sharing of the board packet and posting announcements and the Teams platform involves you can post members can post questions and talk and then to have Ashley or other staff respond to them. It's like a collaboration platform, and the SharePoint aspect of it enables you to access prior board packets, that sort of thing. I've had experience with SharePoint at work, so we had one of their staff just go over the basics with us.
That's it. All right, thank you, John.
Yeah.
Any questions for John? All right, moving along. Michael Blackwell.
Well, we will have asset strategy coming in just a second. Are they here? No? All right. Well, in that case, hey, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Thank you so much to Brittany and let's see, Belinda and Marianne, who provided you nice little treats in front of you. Oh, Brittany, no.
Thank you.
Belinda, you brought in a Lundorf. Okay. What is it? Employee? What is it? Boss Appreciation Day or whatever? Yeah. Okay. So, Brittany, thank you so very much. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody, and thank you so much for being here today. We can do at least a couple of celebrations. First of all, we have 2 5-year celebrations, and that's for Helen Kristoff, who's here at Leonardtown, and then Andy Tidings also, who have been here for 5 years. Congratulations both. And both are wonderful customer service and programming staff. They just do a great job with us. So we're really delighted to celebrate their anniversary. Next, we have LaRonda Gray, who's getting a Hip Hip Hooray Award this morning. And LaRonda's been involved with training some new staff members, and it's on Sundays, and that's made Sundays run more smoothly and efficiently. So thank you for your support of teamwork. And
Sure.
anything you want to say?
Thank you for recognizing that. I appreciate it.
Get a microphone too.
Thank you. Not much to say, just thank you for recognizing me. I appreciate that. All right, thank you.
The others we can get around to signing, but I'll just go ahead. Okay.
No one's ever wanted my signature so much before.
Yeah, so next is for Melissa Racine, Karen Ogletree, Brianna Thorne, Anna Williams, and Lee Rowe. Every once in a while, because we're a public place, we do have medical emergencies. And in some cases, that involves working very carefully with somebody who does not want medical treatment, even though we can clearly see that they need it. So we had an incident where all of them were involved with alternately soothing and then coaching someone, getting the medical units here, getting that situation taken care of. I should say that our staff are trained in CPR and the use of the AED machine, and that's largely due to the efforts of staff, especially Marianne and Belinda, who are actually doing training for the county on these things. So it's a great partnership with going with the county. But in this case, for handling a patient medical emergency with empathy, grace, and kindness, reflecting to our community that we are truly concerned for their health and safety. So you can imagine that's a very stressful situation for somebody who's not a trained medic to try to deal with that kind of situation. So thanks for them for doing that. Next for Naomi Cole. Thank you for consistently assisting residents of the Veterans Home. Oh, okay, great. Here comes asset strategy. Why don't we just go on ahead and work with them, and I'll continue once we're finished with them. Yeah. Why do they never want to stay?
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. All right, there's the other half.
Yeah, good morning,
Morning.
or happy Friday, if it's the right thing to say.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, that too. Is it?
It is.
Uh-oh, I might be in trouble.
Hope you didn't forget.
No, I did not. So Al, well, take it away.
So good morning, everybody. And let me lay out our agenda. I know, Michael, you said 15 to 20 minutes, so we'll be mindful of the clock. And three things we want to cover: a high-level view of what happened in the fourth quarter. We want to discuss some rebalancing recommendations. There's a market value update that we sent to Michael yesterday that will facilitate that discussion. And then finally, another action item from the last meeting to look at other large cap value options and possible replacement of Coho as a large cap value fund in the portfolio. And Michael, if you can turn to the quarterly report, we'll start there. Michael, can you pull it up, or if not, we can just speak to it and tell everybody what page we're on.
You can't do a screen share there?
We can. John?
Okay, let me get over there and get going with that. Here it is.
Thank you.
So John, you can handle this page, but again, high level.
Sure. I think the quarter was a negative performance quarter overall for fixed income. The big story in the fourth quarter was that the Federal Reserve, even though it had done a second cut in December, signaled that it may not be doing interest rate cuts as fast and at a level that the market had anticipated. And so interest rates started to go up. If we look over to the right-hand side of this page 4, looking at the Q4 column, you'll see that almost all the indexes are negative for fixed income, reflecting the increase in interest rates. And at their meeting, that they had recently, they also signaled no interest rate cut for that meeting. So, and inflation news in the last couple of days has been high. So, the thought that there won't be a lot of interest rate cuts this year seems to be, coming to fruition. If the bigger story of last quarter relative to equities was the fact that in Q4, large cap growth was still the biggest performer that quarter, led by the mega cap, 7 stocks that comprise the S&P 500 to a high degree. So, and we'll see how that plays out within your portfolio as we go through it. So, Al, where should we jump to next?
Let's touch compliance, always an important component for these review meetings. So John's page 12.
Okay.
So the big story here, and this is what we'll address in the market value update, is the underweight in fixed income and the overweight in our domestic equity. And just for this page at the far right, you can see the within range. So we are in compliance with the guidelines in your investment policy statement. So we're not out of alignment with allocation in the 4 major asset classes. Any questions on that? If not, next page, John.
Can I ask you, just to be sure that we're on the same page with that document, what is the date of the investment policy statement you're working from?
We'd have to go into our folder to get that.
Let me check. I can check
Find
that
it, John.
in the meantime.
Thank you.
It says on the slide as of December 31st. Is that what the date that this would be active?
It says December 31st.
Is that? Oh, John's asking for a different, wait, okay, sorry.
Then the market value update we'll look at will be through the close of the market, I think on the 12th. So it'll be the current allocation. Okay, well, John is looking for the IPS. John, you just want to click over in page 13
13, okay.
so we can touch upon what happened for the quarter. So you can
Yeah,
see.
you know, Al and committee, since I'm sharing the screen, if I go into the files to check the date of the investment policy statement, you'll be seeing that as well. So
why don't we go ahead with the presentation? You can update us on that date later.
yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
way. Yeah.
It's the recent changes that we made within the last last year or two. So we'll get with you on, I'll give you the exact date of that.
I forwarded you the most recent one when it was approved by this board. So you have whatever the most recent one is.
Okay, perfect.
John, I think we're seeing.
Yeah, we have your calendar.
Yeah, apologies there. Let me get back to it. There you go.
All right, so far left for the quarter, John's comments on a challenging quarter, particularly on the equities. And you can see we had a negative return of 2.9%, or target, which comes out of the investment policy statement, a negative 1.9. So we underperformed by a little over 1% for the quarter. And from an attribution perspective, it really is tied to two of our managers, one being Coho that we're going to look at. And for the quarter, they were off almost 4% against the index. So a major contributor to the underperformance against the benchmark. And then in a secondary, Fuller Thaler, which is in our small cap component, also underperformed for the quarter by 1.8%. But with them, from inception, which goes back to 1921 year end, they've returned 11.7%, and the index is around 2%. So we've got very large outperformance, and they're in the second percentile of the peer universe. So just a challenging quarter with transition in what's happening in the marketplace. So no concerns there. So any questions on what happened for the quarter?
Just to make sure I understand, it's just saying that the main reason that we underperformed so much is Coho, which was off 4% against the index, and Fuller Thaler, but Fuller Thaler has outperformed over the longer term, so we're not worried about them.
Correct.
Okay.
So again, keeping an eye on the clock, what we want to do next is turn to the market value update.
Okay.
We can get into the rebalancing. Perfect. So John, why don't you jump in and instead of just driving, I'll let you talk.
Sure. So let's see, if we look at the market value update, this echoes what we saw in the graph regarding the overweights. We can see that domestic large cap were over, and as well in small mid cap broad, and we're underweight by 2% in domestic fixed. So our discussion here would be to rebalance and, in essence, you know, to determine how we want to take and who we want to take the weights from in Schwab, Coho, and Edgewood, as well as Fuller and Thaler, and put that into domestic fixed. And now we had a plan for how we might want to address that, since we're going to be recommending to replace Coho. So the idea would be to try and make these three funds equal in terms of what their, or close to equal in terms of what their allocation are in large cap, while we try and meet that overweight. And then we would take the required amount out of Fuller and Thaler to get that to its 17% target allocation. And that would all go into the Dodge and Cox fixed income portfolio.
John and Al, can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing with the current news about tariffs and other things, and how that would influence the decision or might influence the future of this particular portfolio?
Sure. And what's going to, with clients in general who have a diversified portfolio, it's going to, at least in the short term, lead to some volatility in terms of which industries and companies are affected by the tariffs. And certainly, if we look at the technology stocks, which have been leading the market, within the S&P 500, there's not an immediate thought that they would be damaged by it, but so in that section, they're looking to be okay. But it's going to be other industries, such as it could impact people such as in housing, for example, because of tariffs on wood products and related and furniture and furnishings and those sorts of things. They'll trickle down through other industries, and the related issue could be on in fixed income, the fact that interest rates will stay higher, because if prices are going up, that impacts inflation and the rate of inflation. And so the Federal Reserve may not necessarily be increasing rates, but they will likely not be decreasing rates in a way that the market would have anticipated back during 2024. So, we think that it's not going to turn the market totally negative, but it'll just be some volatility within certain industries and such, based on the fact that their costs have gone up, and how that then impacts demand for their products domestically as it plays out through the industries.
So in that case, the recommendations that you're making are specifically geared at reducing risk drastically if we're looking at volatility?
Yes, it is, because domestic fixed income can be negative in terms of its performance, but on a relative basis, equities can be much more negative in their performance. And so if we stick to the long-term targets and, over time, the long-term return should be as we expect we're going to get, and it'll not sort of exacerbate any negative results because we're overweight in equities during the trip as we head to those long-term target goals.
Thank you.
And one other comment on large cap. We're sitting here with Coho, which is a value fund, as you can see, and Edgewood is growth. And through the end of 24, growth has been dominant with all the technology, the Magnificent Seven. But so far in 2025, which has been very healthy, there's been a rotation that now I'm looking at some data that we get weekly from the close of the market on February 3rd, where I'll use an index. So the Russell 1000 value, and this is year to date, is up 4.4%, and the growth component is up 1.7. So we're seeing a rotation into the undervalued stocks. We know the growth stocks on the price to earnings are very aggressively positioned. So it's another opportunity to just rebalance within the large cap equity and move some of the 153,000 in growth, the Edgewood, into the replacement fund for Coho. So we take some of the profits out of that growth component, and that's where that embedded volatility can be challenging going forward, and do some de-risking just within the large cap component.
As a point of procedure, do we need to we need to get an approval from the committee for that plan, since we don't have discretion? So is there any questions about that, or is the committee approved with that recommendation?
I won't speak for the group, but personally, I'd like for us to discuss it after you finished your presentation, and we'll get back to you one way or the other.
Okay.
I
Perfect.
agree. It's a lot of information. I think we need to mull over and discuss a little bit more, and perhaps deal with it next month.
Okay.
But I do have a question for you on two other things. Number one, a couple of years ago, a question was raised about one of your charts, the one with, doesn't matter which one, but with all the little orange dots in it. And at that point, we were informed that perhaps our peer grouping was incorrect. And we moved to a peer group which is health and welfare less than 50 million.
Right.
So here we are with 1.5 million. And my question is, are we still being compared to our peers who are in the less than 50 million category when we're way below that?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so we're still in the broad category, not the, so not say less than 10 million or less than 15 million. It's still less than 50 million. And so we can, but what we did look at in the chart was the fact that most all the health and welfare plans were heavily skewed towards fixed income in terms of what they did. And so as we looked at it, we, had seen that there are not as many outliers as you in this group at all. And so it would be an extremely small sample that would be, in the general vicinity of your size that's in these peer groups. So, it could be maybe 5 dots that we would have on this scatter chart. And so that would, and we can show that at the next meeting, so you can just see what that looks like and judge for yourselves in terms of whether you think that's an appropriate way to look at things. Because the real driver of this is the overall weight towards equity and fixed income. You're, in essence, a much higher allocation to equity than most all of the members of this peer group. And most of them are, say, probably 35 or 40% in equity, and 70% or 65% in fixed income. So even if it was smaller, the group would still be, having the type of performance that you have. But we
And then
can,
thank you. My second question is, how do you all calculate where the target triangle winds up in your charts?
the system that we use, in terms of looking at the target, it, in essence, let's just go to this next page. If you look down at the bottom here, you'll see this is page 19. This is where we show which indexes we're using for the target and what their percentages are. And based on that, the performance reporting system comes up with what the target's performance is. It takes a look at, the S&P 500's index and the Russell 2500 index and the other ones to come up with that target. Is that helpful?
Well, a little bit, but then if you'll indulge me and turn back to page 18.
Sure.
Looking at the 5-year chart on page 18, there's the target way above where we are, and we're way out on a limb for volatility. Although by being above the horizontal, at least we're supposedly getting the returns that we're looking for.
Right. Yes. And so if you're talking about the target is outperforming. And is the question, what is the question related to that placement there?
I guess the question has to do with us being that far out on the volatility scale.
Yeah. And so this is where we just talked about the challenge of you having, around 65% in equities. That brings your volatility, your standard deviation, higher than most of the peer group, where because they have a lower allocation to equities, and probably just about reverse the level of equities that you have.
Perfect. That's the clarification I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Happy to help. If there aren't any other questions about this, Al, should we
go to this? Yeah, let's jump to the value search since we're pushing the clock here.
Yes.
But we encourage questions. That's
yeah,
the value of these calls to make sure we cover anything we're curious about.
So here we have
one question. I'm sorry. In late January, tech stocks lost nearly $1 trillion because of the release of the Chinese DeepSeek AI.
Yes.
Is that something you're considering in our future investments?
That would be so. Whether DeepSeek would be, I don't think that DeepSeek would be part of the index that you're using. And Edgewood, as the large cap growth manager, probably would not be out there buying direct Chinese stock.
I wasn't suggesting buying so much as looking at the market overall and saying, okay, is that a temporary thing, or are we investing in tech? And obviously, some of the larger companies would not be affected by that, but an Oracle or an NVIDIA got clobbered. So,
right,
and
so, and Edgewood, as the large cap growth company, could potentially be the one that would be exposed to that. And let's see, do have some of the names that are in the index for technology, but they don't have all of it. I can follow up after the call with the allocations to, in terms of their top 10 holdings and such, so that we could see what they're in. And
Okay, sure.
see what that is.
Don't have to do it now, thanks.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up question based on what you were saying earlier about the volatility? You said that we have, 65% in equities, and that makes our volatility higher, and that others in the peer group have the opposite level. So is that implying that the others have like 65% fixed income and 35% equities? And so then that goes back, does that go back to the investment policy statement that we've established?
Yes, it does. And well, so the health and welfare plans, if they're making distributions, and funding the beneficiaries of the plan, then, actively doing that, then they're going to, because they have to have cash available for disbursements, and they want to try and keep that level of cash, available to do it, they're going to have a higher allocation to fixed income, which has a lot lower volatility, that they'll be able to draw on to, meet those obligations. And they'll have a lower allocation to equities. But in your case, because you're not making any distributions at all at this point and hadn't envisioned any in the near term, the allocation to take more risk in order to get higher return over time was decided by the committee. And so that's why we have the allocation that we have.
Thank you.
Sure.
And that's also somewhat tied to the actuarial study that you have where you're, to beat your liabilities, it was, I think 5.5 or 6% target return, which moved it in again to a higher equity allocation to beat that long-term objective. And at our next meeting, we're going to have an asset allocation and analysis where we can look at this issue and our current percentage target each of the asset classes. And if we want to take a look at what would happen if we move 10% out of equities to fix, how would that lower the return, lower the standard deviation, just to revisit that current targeting in the investment policy statement. So this is a good discussion to set the stage for that discussion when we get together in May. Here is our search to look at other options for Coho. And for time, I'm going to skip some of the qualitative pages, except for John, page 3, I think, just to look at.
Page 3.
Yep.
Okay.
The sector allocation. So you can see to the far right, we are using the Russell 1000 value, which is the appropriate index for large cap value funds. And to the left are the 11 sectors from technology down to utilities. So we can see how each one of these funds aligns with the index. One thing you'll note, technology in the index is 9%. It varies across the board, from Coho being a very defensive manager, which is part of what we'll discuss. And that has been.
Al,
yes.
Sorry to barge in, but for the group, we're at 10:15. So I just wanted to check in with you in terms of how much time would you like us to devote on this?
Could you please give us the overall recommendation, since the board will need to consider and get back to you about that? So what is that recommendation overall?
Let me do this. We can, maybe, John, let's go to the 5-year scatter chart just to facilitate the discussion.
Okay, here was
And
the
here we are
5-year
in the
scatter
risk of
chart.
return. And what we wanted to do, you can see Coho at the bottom left. Like I mentioned, they're very defensive,
The red triangle.
red triangle. And that's
This is slide
their-
15.
Slide 15, yes.
Yep, slide 15. And this chart is plotted on the large cap value peer universe. And then we wanted to show you two options. One being Dodge and Cox. You can see it's plotted in the upper right, has higher standard deviation, and that leads to higher return. And then the Vanguard Equity Income Fund, lower standard deviation, plots in the upper left quadrant. And both funds meet our expectations, and this can be a discussion that you all can have. If you want to be more aggressive, Dodge and Cox is the answer. The other component of this is how does this match up with Edgewood? So Edgewood, being a growth manager that is more aggressive, also plots in the upper right. Higher allocation of technology. And as we're building portfolios, we would be looking for a fund to complement the growth fund on the value side, and that would lead us to an upper left. So we lean towards the Vanguard, just from a more diversified way of having an aggressive fund, which you have Edgewood, and have the value side be more defensive, which in this scenario would be the Vanguard fund. And hopefully this visual puts that into context for you.
And just to show here, we'll go out to 10 years, which is on page 17. And there you'll see that Vanguard, the green dot, is in the upper left of its peer group, not right at the median of its peer group. So, and you can see that Coho is in the lower left. So we're looking at two alternatives, and it's just a question as to how comfortable are you with the volatility of those returns over time.
Let me give you one more data point, looking at the Sharpe ratio for this 10-year chart, which is measuring the risk-adjusted. So it's based upon looking at the standard deviation, the 10-year return. Keep page 10. Oh, go ahead, John. Do page 10, 10-year.
10. There's 10.
That's 3.
Th-
No,
Well,
3
you want
10-year
10
stats.
years.
Yeah, we were on the 10-year scatter chart.
Okay. Here it is.
So here's a good example. If we look at Dodge and Cox on upmarket capture, that 112 puts them in the 7th percentile. So their good performance for 10 years is driven by upmarket capture. The Vanguard is driven by a very strong down market. You can see the 86, 16th percentile. So each one has good performance for 10. But again, Dodge and Cox does it with taking more risk, more return. Vanguard does with being more defensive, losing less in down markets. And John, just flick back to in the Sharpe ratios, as I mentioned, you can see Vanguard has the better Sharpe ratio because of the very defensive positioning with their standard deviation. You can see to the left of Sharpe ratio, it's in the 15th percentile, where Dodge and Cox is in the 86. And John, flip back to the
Page
scatter.
is that on?
Just go back to the scatter chart. If we're pressing,
Okay.
that was all on the 10-year stats. But I wanted just to mention on this chart, the Sharpe ratio for Dodge and Cox is in the 32nd percentile, for Vanguard in the 14th. So you have the better risk-adjusted performance with the Vanguard, again, driven by being more defensive. A little quick, but hopefully you've got the big picture.
Okay.
Good, thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
Well, thank you so much. We will, John and Al, the board will be looking at what you presented and get back to you with a recommendation. Yeah.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
Yes,
I am looking at our Schwab statement that lists all the mutual funds and things that we have.
mhm,
And Dodge and Cox income is listed on there.
yes.
So are we currently with Dodge and Cox? We are?
The firm has a number of different investment strategies in it. And among them is a bond strategy that is run by an entirely different team. The firm is very large and has, over 100 employees in it, and large groups of investment management professionals. But there is a dedicated fixed income team that just invests in bonds, and the Dodge and Cox income strategy is, as it turns out, a very good fixed income strategy, and certainly was better than Western Asset. I think that was previously in the portfolio. But then they also have this equity team that is a value investment style. And as you can see over time, they also have good track record. So yeah, our equity analyst that does the research on the large cap equity managers and did this study, independently came up with Dodge and Cox, without regard to who was already in this portfolio. But we don't see that as a challenge, because organizationally, Dodge and Cox is extremely stable, and has a great history over 60 years of or more of being in business and dedicated to these strategies.
Thank you. I'm trying to connect the dots across documents and it gets very confusing. So I appreciate the context.
Oh, sure. I can see how that would be.
Just final comment on that. When our analyst works on this, she starts with the full universe of large cap value funds, which gets into the hundreds, and ended up, I think, with a finals list of 4 fund families. And just independently, we sat down as a group and felt Dodge and Cox was the best of the 4. All 4 were qualified, but we liked their risk return profile, and we were looking for the upper right plotting to complement looking at the Vanguard on the upper left. So it was a thought process, but it doesn't happen that often where one fund family in separate searches, not related to each other, end up being the winner. But large, well-established, as John mentioned, and historically just been a very, very solid fund family that produces good results in multiple asset classes.
Well, one bit of good news is the end of January, the account is worth $1,551,618.97, which is an increase over the start of the month. And I think we're getting back to pretty much pre-pandemic values with that. It's been for a while. So, we got some good news here. Thank you so much.
Yes.
And we'll be back in touch.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Have a good rest of the meeting. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Let's get to some laboring stuff. Yes.
Move on. Does anybody have a knife? I want to slash my wrist.
No, we're going to focus positive energy now. We're going to have some fun with library stuff. And oops, you just turned it off. There you go. That was something. So Naomi is doing So Naomi, at Charlotte Hall, we haven't been working with the Charlotte Hall Veterans Home for a while during the pandemic. Obviously, they were having lots of issues, but we're seeing a lot more of them now. And she's doing viewer advisory. We've got readers advisory where librarians will talk to somebody. What do you like to read? Well, why don't you try this? In this case, it's viewer advisory. She's working a lot with the people in the Charlotte Hall Veterans Home to get them DVDs, Blu-rays, television shows, and movies that they like. So they come in, what should I look at? And she does a lot of work with them, trying to match their interests. So Naomi, thank you so much for that. Great work. Also up at Charlotte Hall, Annie Cross finished a complete inventory of the collection. So it's nice for a library to know what they really have. Here's what the catalog says you have, but that's not always completely true. So we have to periodically, we go through at all the branches and we say, all right, what do we really have? And we do a complete inventory. And that allows us to say, okay, looks like we need to buy more here. And Charlotte Hall has a sort of a different clientele than the other two libraries. And so we want to make sure that that kind of different clientele is getting their representation. So Annie, thank you for that. It's a lot of work to just go back and scan every item and make sure that we have what we think we have.
I'm sorry. So why does that happen? You're saying what the electronic catalog says is in a library branch or library system, and what we actually have on the shelf, there's a discrepancy.
There can be a discrepancy, yeah.
That from loss?
Yeah, well, it could be that an item has disappeared. It could also be just the opposite. Something didn't get checked in, but did get reshelved. So it's just good to know, as I say, exactly what we've got there. And we do kind of try to make sure that the catalog's an accurate reflection. It doesn't work very well when somebody said, I want this book. It's nowhere to be found. Brittany is here. Brittany is owed a hip hip hooray day. So the day that Onyx Storm was released to the public, everybody knows what Onyx Storm is, right? The biggest selling bestseller of all time. I thought that that would be the last Harry Potter book, but no, apparently, I read in the New York Times anyway, this is the fastest best-selling book ever. Romantasy, it's fantasy combined with romance, and it's extremely popular. We didn't have it on the day of release. Brittany went out to bookstores and bought 13 copies and brought them back, and those went into circulation right away. So Brittany, great work. You don't worry about having extra copies of it because they will continue to check out for quite some time. So Brittany, thank you so very much for that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry. I missed one. Thank you so much for that reminder. Eleanor is going to into Laddie Early Start. She has graduated from that program. It's one that does help people, learn the basics of what librarianship is, great customer service. So Eleanor, congratulations on that. And Brittany, sorry. Belinda, thank you for the reminder. I appreciate that. Moving on to the fiscal year 25 budget review. You have that document. There are areas that I am looking at just to primarily at this point try to forecast for next year. So looking at that on page 1 of that document, obviously our health insurance costs are up, and we are readjusting those expectations for next year. Over on the next page, page 2, you see that utilities. Yeah, go ahead.
So under salaries, we still have COVID hours. Are we going to continue that next year? Or why are we doing that? Are we?
No, well, this board voted to keep going with COVID hours even after the federal government stopped that. We will have some admin hours, but we're not calling, it's not for COVID anymore. We have now gone to the staff and said, okay, COVID is endemic. Actually, I understand that flu is more a problem in many states right now, actually killing more people than COVID for the first time in a long time. So we're not going to be calling it COVID anymore in the future.
Okay, but is this carrying over till June 30th? Or did we make that policy change already and told the staff no more COVID hours?
At the moment, if somebody has COVID, that's positive. That would be good.
So we voted to continue COVID hours through this fiscal year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Admin hours are actually hours. So it's not all of those.
Yeah, and it's not all COVID, no.
Second question. The last line, the healthcare clinic admin fees, you had mentioned that we were getting a refund of,
Current county will pay for this year's and partially next year.
when do we,
We're still budgeted for that, so if we're over for health insurance, we can have that in that portion of the budget, but otherwise it will.
when do we see that? Any idea or?
Well, yeah, if the county, we agreed, with the county that, they already exactly, we usually have the rebate sometime January, February, sometimes December. So they told us, we discussed it with you guys, I don't remember where's the last meeting, but the previous one, but they told us what it was. We had discussed with them what we were going to do, so they are keeping it, applying it to our admin fees for this year and next year. So it won't be an in and out for us, it's staying on kind of that.
So it's a credit, it's a credit.
It's a
basically.
credit, basically, yeah. So we
It was around
we have that amount covered, basically.
It was around $24,000.
No, it was 16. No, what was the refund though?
It's about 20.
Yeah.
So-
We can get that number for you.
Thank you.
I know.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Right.
In any case, we did get that and it's already sort of taken care of. And we're in for 3 years on that contract and then we will sort of see where we are with it.
Very lightly discussed usage. And we were concerned about it. Can you get just a head count?
No, they did not release those figures to us. If a library staff member uses it, they will not tell us. For one thing, they don't count it that way. They just say you're in the health insurance plan. So no, we do not know. We are concerned about doing even an anonymous survey internally. These are health issues. We don't really know. We can tell you that people who have used it and have discussed it are satisfied with it, and I'm one of them. So I think you'll find that that's going to be a difficult thing to measure.
Could you survey the anonymous survey to ask if people want to continue it? You're not asking about usage at that
Yeah,
point.
you can do
but
that.
That would
I
be,
think I'm sorry, I don't think it's a question we want to ask. I think we want to ask how many employees have used it?
We don't know.
And I'm saying anonymous survey, and this is touchy. It would have to be voluntary anonymous survey. How many employees have used it? Not how many times, not what for. Have you been to the clinic? And I'd be interested in what branch they came from also. So
I do not want to do that.
Not a matter of liking it or not, but at the almost 70% cost over on the $16,800. I mean, I did a quick calculation. If every employee went once, that's $200 a visit, so they can save a $30 copay. That makes no sense financially. If every employee in this library went twice, they would save $60 and we're paying over $200. Financially, that makes no sense for us. I'd rather give the employees $100 extra and save the 100. But this is a really high fee. And I imagine probably less than half the employees have used it. So now you're talking maybe $400 a visit. So
Well, we're in
it's
it for 3
financially
years, so
doesn't make sense for us to pay this money to Evergreen and take a loss on it, a huge loss on this. So it's, and I don't know, you're right. This is the whole thing I warned going. into
We're in
We
it
have
for
no
3
data.
years
We have
though.
no
So
data on the effectiveness of this or what our gain is, or there's just no data. We're blind. We're blindly paying with $17,000. We have no idea what we're getting for it.
What you're touching on health issues and we can't do that. Not anonymous, we're not supposed to do that. It is a private issue with our employees and we do not touch that. They can use it or not use it, that is their responsibility. Second, this is really a county thing. If we pull out, they'll charge us more for it. One way or another, we're gonna pay for it. Because this is supposed to lower the overall health insurance for the county. If we pull out, they will charge us more for our health insurance. And we are not going to have that particular thing that they believe will help more.
Well, then we need to have some serious, negotiations with the county because that's an unacceptable position.
we're in it,
blackmail us.
we're in it
But
for
then
3
they're gonna
years.
So then they're gonna blackmail us. This cost $10,000. Now it's almost $17,000. And I can guarantee you we're paying a huge rate to save some co-pays. I'd rather give the money to the employees.
But we're in this. for
We're in it, we're in it for 3 years.
Anything can be negotiated. Anything can be negotiated, and we need to sit down at the table with them. We know what.
I will ask
Fiscal 26.
David
It's gonna
Weisskopf
be a
has,
very difficult fiscal year.
David Weisskopf has volunteered to come address the board about this, so I'll ask him to come.
I'd like to have Dave Yingling in here also.
I'm sorry, Dave Yingling is the person I meant, not Mr. Weisskopf. Yeah.
It's just, it makes no sense for us to pay these fees to the county and we literally, they can't tell us what we're getting for it. How many employees? I agree. I don't want to do a survey. So there's no way to know if anybody's using this. A handful of people in this room might volunteer. We can't ask the question. We don't know what the benefit is. We don't know if it's saving us any money. And we don't even know what they're going to charge us in 26 or 27. What if it goes up to $24,000 or $25,000?
Well, we will.
When are we going to say we're writing out a blank check and we don't know what we're getting for it? What would you do that with your own money?
I guess I think that it's not going to look particularly good in our relations with the county to dig on an agreement you made for 3 years.
I don't think $17,000 is going to break the bank with the county. I just don't think it is. And we tell them.
It's an
we are
agreement.
very
It's an
tight
agreement that the
fiscally
board made.
and can't afford this. No. Okay, so they quoted $10,000 to us and they're charging us 17. That's a matter of trust.
I hope that we can do this. It's not just about money. It's about another benefit. Also, you don't have to be able to provide benefits. We also don't have control of the insurance. We pull out of this, the county can pull us out of their insurance completely. And then we can't insure our employees at all because we cannot afford to insure our own. It's a bigger step than just one little contract. And we did agree with the community. We did talk to them. We worked with the community.
Commissioner Hugh was just discussing this past Tuesday at the council, at the sort of the county commissioners meeting, and saying it's a benefit. Employees really don't even have to wait, which you might have to do very much if you're going to an urgent care center. This is a good benefit. I understand the cost, but I also understand that if you entered into a contract for 3 years and it looks like you're reneging, that's not going to look good for this board. And I strongly discourage you from doing that.
Numbers that you've shared with us for us to sit down with county people and say, look, we're concerned about the cost of this thing. We have no way of knowing who is or who isn't using it. So we're going to put that on the side for a minute. But the costs are just excruciating. Let's talk it over and see what they have to say. I think frankly, it would show some fiscal responsibility on our part, regardless of how the discussion comes out.
I think that we are in it for 3 years, and I don't think we can go back on our word. I think we would damage the relationship. My question is though, when this 3-year contract is up, what are we going to have to make a decision to continue forward or not, right? Like, will there be any information about usage so that we can just make an informed decision whether to continue this contract post 3 years, or are we kind of like over a barrel and we just have to continue regardless?
The whole county, the whole county.
Okay.
They do not.
Yeah, they don't ask people, who do you work for? Yeah. So in 2.5 years, it might be a decision we'd have to consider. For all we know, the county may not continue this in 3 years if they decide it's not fiscally responsible.
Do we have figures for the whole usage for, or in term, I mean,
I don't have them,
financial?
I don't have them on hand, but I can certainly get them.
Because I would think that the county itself would be looking at whether the amount that is being paid out as a whole is being made up in in savings on the amount that they pay to the insurance company.
Yeah, it's 2.5 years. We might have a better idea of what's going to be happening.
I would hope that the contract with Evergreen would delineate, they have to provide data like that. How many clients came in, what services are provided, et cetera, and report back to the county. I would hope the county would have that data. And that's not to say that we couldn't ask them to add to their data collection just what agency the client is coming from. That way we'll know it's the school system, it's a police officer, it's a library employee. And
they have indicated that they don't want to do that.
We can ask them if they could collect that data. But again, I would strongly push back. I mean, I can't vote to continue this another year. We need to talk to the county about this. Paying $200, $300, $400 for a visit. Literally, we could write checks out to the employees at this library and give them the money. And we would be better off financially than paying this fee.
Don't forget though that we're losing their staff time by them being sick and not getting into a doctor. So take that into your math.
Right, but you're assuming if Evergreen doesn't exist, they're not going to go to the doctor at all, and I don't think that's
no. They're going to
might
have
be-
to wait, is what
It
I'm
might be
saying.
more convenient, and for some employees, I mean, if you're in Ridge, are you going to come past 3 urgent care clinics to come up here to Evergreen? You
Yes,
might,
because you can
might,
get in
yeah.
immediately.
Yeah. But on the other hand, you might not.
I think
Something
we're in
we
for
need to
2.5 years. Maybe please just move on.
Yeah, we're already signed up for 3 years in this. I think that if we do go to the county and say, now we want to relook at this, it's going to really put a bad taste in the county's mouth about the library and sour a relationship that we don't need to sour. We're in this and we're committed to it right now. We can revisit it in 2.5 years when it comes up again, when it is a point. But personally, I don't think that we should push back at the county on this right now.
Good.
County brought us from their insurance. Right? And then we do not have. If we push back too much, we can be dropped.
I don't think data gathering is pushback. But aside from that, did I read recently that this whole thing is up for sale?
It actually changed hands.
It changed
It's no
hands,
longer
yeah.
Everside, it's now Marathon.
Well,
That's already
so
happened.
are we gonna bring in ask David Yingling to come in next month then? And we can go over some
I
questions.
will ask him. He has volunteered to come talk to you about it.
I remember that.
So moving along, you see the utility accounts are going up. There's one bit of good news there, and that is under the hall water, sewer, trash. You'll see that is substantially lower. We've been talking with Smyrla. they have a new vendor for that up there for the trash and recycling. And they are giving good service after several months. So we're going to look to negotiate with them for our Lexington Park location. We think we can lower costs there substantially, but it's a question of when we can get out of the contract with Waste Management. So we're going to be looking at that. I think that we can find some cost savings there. And that is a good thing to have happened. I guess about the only other thing that I'm really looking at right now is just still on page 3, our circulation collection. We're at 43%, so we're closing the gap some. I want that to be 100% spent by the end of this year in June. So we can encumber in hopes that we do that. But I know that Brittany has really been upping those orders, and I'm very pleased to see that that amount is increasing.
About 60% encumbered right now.
Yeah, this is spent, and the amount encumbered. So what happens with this, as we've talked to you about before, is all right, the publisher say this book's coming out. Our vendor says, all right, do you want to order this book? We say, yes, we do. So we spend we encumber the money. It's not spent. We actually get the item in. So I'd like to see spent up to more than 50% at this point in the year, but we are getting there, and we've got a lot encumbered. So we're expecting this amount to be spent by the end of the year. I just want to make sure that our customers are getting as many of the items as they possibly can get into their hands each year.
Would
Yeah,
it
our
make sense then
selectors
to
have
add a
started
line to
ordering.
this category called encumbered?
No, that
Our selectors have been ordering 60 to 90 days out. And then I know for adult fiction, our adult fiction selector has actually ordered items that are coming out through the end of April, early May.
To clarify, encumbered and database in which we purchased the books.
Okay.
So spent means just you wrote the check.
yeah.
Long, and they will in the next fiscal year and we can't go on for.
Okay, any kind of questions about where we are on that? If not, I'd like to move us away from money to start talking about what's happening in your library. I think it would be good for the public to be hearing quite a bit of some of the things that are going on if they are tuning in, and certainly it's just an interesting thing to talk about. So our budget request has been submitted to the county, and we will know in March kind of where we are with that, but I'll tell you the exact date later when we review some specific dates coming up. Legislative action has begun. The state library did ask to see our policies on collection management, and we sent those up. And you'll recall that you've already implemented all the aspects of the Freedom to Read Act that have come forward. So I'm confidently expecting they're going to come back and say, yep, everything looks good. If it doesn't, if they've got recommendations, say we want this, make sure is in your policies, they'll let us know. But I'm not thinking that they'll have any changes. I'll talk a little bit more later about what's going on legal as or some legislative aspects. We're still implementing Paylocity. That's going on and going on well for the most part. There's little glitches here and there, that we're asking them to adjust. They didn't at the end of the year take sort of readjust the leave balances that happen. So for example, if somebody like me doesn't use all their leave, they lose some. Right now it looks like I've still got it. So they'll be adjusting that kind of thing. Talk briefly about that. What's going on?
Oh, sure. So we have found that as we've hired new staff, that staff have not necessarily had many roles previously where they've had to do very independent decision making without a manager like right next to them. So we implemented decision making training to help staff understand the goals and priorities of the organization and give them tools for making good decisions on behalf of the library. And so we've gotten some very good feedback so far on the first two groups. And we've got one more group to train because we got canceled for snow. So we're looking forward to it.
I have a question.
Of course.
What kind of training? I mean, is it like a training that you brought in? Is it training that you created? And what kind of training is it?
Yeah, we developed it from scratch. Big issues and questions that staff hear about all the time. And so we kind of went up another level from that to like, so how are good decisions made? And then how do you apply that in the library context? And so we're hoping that our staff are empowered to make great decisions right there on behalf of customers and feel good afterwards about their process in making that decision.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Work with our staff. We're an organization that likes to make sure that our staff are empowered to make decisions on their own. We work as a one community and one group, and we want them to know how to be proactive in their own jobs and be secure in the decisions that they make so that we can back them up securely when they're in a situation. And if they ever leave us, they take these skills with them and have a higher ability to deal with these situations later. And we found that our staff, compared to some of the other communities around here, when we interview other staff from other counties, have a higher degree and ability to make decisions on their own.
We could take that training on the road to other places.
Just let us know.
Maybe we need it.
Okay, we have launched an initiative for staff to learn more about artificial intelligence. Like it or not, it is going to be affecting operations in our library. So we want them to kind of know the basic the basic functions it can do, what it really doesn't do very well, at least yet, and think about ways it can be effectively employed in the library. I, for example, have been using it when I'm sending sensitive emails. Say, ChatGPT, here's my email. I'd like to make sure that it is effectively communicating without sounding threatening or that I'm complaining. And it really will do a good job of saying, looks like you're complaining right here, Michael. So, all right. At Charlotte Hall, we're working with the Arts Council to get an art gallery installed. So if you go into Lexington Park or here in Leonardtown into the Mary Lee Russell room, you see we've got these wonderful local art displays going on. And we're trying to get one at Charlotte Hall too. The Maryland Food Bank Mobile Market has been visiting in December. They gave out groceries to 40 households, 121 people. In January, it was right after the big snow, so it was down some, but we still had 19 households with 72 people visit there, and that's a great partnership for us. Connect and Converse has continued to be a success. That's a program where people who are developmentally challenged come to the library, and they talk with each other. Their family members are there. It's just a really sort of great way to have people who maybe not typical library users or come in and really benefit from our services. We've added an additional section of Cricut up there to sort of meet the demand. People really want to know how to use that Cricut sort of makerspace equipment. We have improved our service, improved our workflow for programming review. So a staff member will come forward and say, I want to do a program on this. Where does it go from there? And there's a whole process by which the branch managers are involved. We have oversight from both adult services and children's services there. So just the way that sort of comes into being approved. Same thing for collection development, who's ordering, when do they order, how. So just some internal processes.
Stop you for a moment.
Sure.
For the food bank, I guess it's not a food bank. Is that inside the library or?
It's a truck that comes around. And it's a big refrigerated truck. You've seen our mobile library, it's actually slightly larger than that. And we've been inside, so there's all kinds of products that people can simply pick up there. And it's not just food, although that's the majority of it. There's chilled food, there's meat products, cheese products, there's vegetables, and then there's necessities, toilet paper, for example. So
Are these people connected with what the various churches are doing?
no, this is Maryland State. And we do then find that they get donations from like a Kroger. And we do have a church connection up there. On site, there is a little free pantry, and they bring, when they're doing collections, they will come help stock that site as well. So
You said the truck is through Maryland State.
yeah, Brittany, do you know where the funding's coming from on that? Yeah, we will find that out for you, but it is, I'm pretty sure it's a state thing. It's not local, and it's not us.
It's a state government, or it's a statewide nonprofit.
I will find that out for you.
Maryland Food Bank.
Right.
And they provide funds and food, and
Okay.
that's run by the state.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure this is a state thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
We have an AI interest group who is sort of working even more on the implementation of AI here in the library, and they're developing some guidelines for staff to use it. What are good ways to use it? What do we don't think are appropriate ways? Sarah Stevenson does Trivia Mondays for the public every other Monday. It's something that you can participate in. We're getting 38 participants every other Monday who are doing trivia contest. St. Mary's Art Council has given us $2,500 to support our summer performers. We are having Digital Navigator and digital literacy grants that came through the state and the ALA. And those are going on right now. It's basically teaching people the basics of computer skills. So those grants were $4,000 and $10,000, and we're using, our staff are using them to expand our computer training. I'll talk about LSTA grants in a second. In Leonardtown, we've submitted an arts grant and begun the purchase of 2 looms for the makerspace. You want to talk about that at all?
So during our staff day, we had New View Fiberworks come over and do a presentation with the staff, and we were really surprised at how much the staff enjoyed it. Like we couldn't get them out of the room, kind of enjoying it. So in speaking with them, they agreed to give us a very nice deal on 2 looms. And I've spoken to the staff here, and we've noted in the community that there's a real appreciation for fiber arts around here. So we'd like to try and expand upon that in the maker space. So we've added 2 new looms. And when the grant comes through, we're also looking at more equipment for the maker space. But they are currently in my office waiting to get set up. So I did pick up the other one just the other day.
Yeah, this is the Lexington Park Library, correct?
No, this is Leonardtown. Yeah.
That was grant money? Or just- okay.
we'd like to get 2 new 3D printers to replace the ones that we've been using, which have been under constant use for 5 years now. So those are due for an upgrade. We're working with the local scout group to get 3 planters on the back patio here for the seeds program. We've had quite a number of staff art programs. So for cricket, under cricket crafts, making tote bags, do-it-yourself starburst mirrors. We have an after-school art club, a sewing machine 101. There's people have made a mini Valentine pillow. So all kinds. Yes, go ahead.
I would like to say that the boys, or the scout troop, sorry, it's not Boy Scout anymore. The scout troop is 1785, and it's my son doing his Eagle Scout project. Thanks.
Well, we'd like a grand opening when they're ready.
Okay, over at Lexington Park, we've added some makerspace program partners there. Solderly will work with us on pottery, and the Newtown Players will work with us on puppet theater building. The adult services team is working on World on the Move. That's a national sort of program we have that's coming in July. We got that with the ALA, and it's about 250,000 years of human migration. So we're working there with St. Mary's College, with Solderly, with the museums, with Historic St. Mary's City. So we're going to have a display that tours around, and we'll be the last people to have that, but then also doing program with all these community partners on what migration in St. Mary's County looks like from the arrival of the first Americans through the present. And the effects, for example, that the bases had locally on migration, or what's happening right now. We're seeing an influx of people who are coming from Central America, and the schools are having to work with that. So what's happening with migration in and out of the county? Interesting
Are you gonna
program.
have a exact schedule for that sometime soon?
We don't have one yet. What the exact programs will be, we're establishing that right now, but we know that it's going to be here July through August, the display itself.
That's what I meant, July through August in the county, but within the county.
It's going to be at Lexington Park Library.
So it'll be at one location in the county.
The display will be at one location, but our partners may have things at their locations as well related to this. So we're just kind of coordinating across all these community partners on that.
Where's it going to be? Is it going to be in the conference room?
It's actually going to be in the lobby leading in, and then spilling out into the library itself, and people will be able to just walk and see the different panels. And we actually got this like 2 years ago, but it's finally making its way here. We had a very successful STEAM program on color mixing. So 60 people came to that, and we're adding shelving for the citizen science kits. Amy, do you want to talk about that at all?
Oh, sure. So we were very grateful to PAC's partnership for helping us develop some citizen science programs, and they provided funding for us to develop citizen science kits as well. So we have kits on astronomy, we have kits on birding, kits on insects, so that people can continue to do their own citizen science work out in the community. And we have ongoing classes and events where people can observe the natural world, learn more about nature right here in our backyards, and learn how they can contribute to ongoing scientific efforts. And so the kits are available to check out. And so we're going to put them out on the floor so that they're very readily available for folks to take a look at and get interested in.
Okay. And finally, with mobile library and outreach, we're working with Solderly and Gold Pedal Farm for citizen science spring break programs and summer. So we'll go there and have programs with them. We have different parks scheduled for our summer storytime program. So the mobile library goes out to a park And that proved extremely popular this past year. And we have just opened it up and we do a program there. So we'll have 60 to 120 people attend one of those at one of the community parks. We are upping the number of outreach events that staff need to attend. So previously it's one, now we're asking each one of our staff to attend an outreach event with one of our partners. So for example, the fair, county fair, we'll have people there. Just different things that we do when we have partnerships out there. So Juneteenth, for example, the library goes and have a presence and we just want to have staff there as well. So did you want to? Yeah, you want to talk about Perks Partners? We'll let Laura take that over.
Is this any business in the county? Is there any limitations or restrictions?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Is this any business in the county? Is there any
Yeah. anyone
restrictions or
else that's
limitations
signed up?
on outside the county or
We
anybody else?
haven't had anybody outside of St. Mary's County. We were focusing mostly on St. Mary's County. So we have sent it out through the St. Mary's County Chamber of Commerce, the Lexington Park Business Association, and the Leonardtown Business Association. And we also, but we're wide open. I mean, if somebody really wanted to do it, as long as they were near enough that somebody could reasonably go with their St. Mary's County Library card, we wouldn't exclude them. Currently we have, I don't want to miss anyone, so I'm going to pull it up really quick. We have Blue Wind Gourmet, both locations of Donut Connection in St. Mary's County. So there's a location in California and Lexington Park. OE Realty will give 10% commission credit at settlement. The Puerto Rican Cafe in Great Mills and Tequila Grill and Cantina in Charlotte Hall have all already signed up. So starting today, you can go in with your library card and receive 10% off. The only exclusion right now is Blue Wind Gourmet says that you cannot combine it with another offer. I guess sometimes they do like Wine Wednesday and you can't combine that. But other than that, that's the only exclusion so far. All of the businesses so far have been really excited. We've also talked to several other who are working through the process of getting it approved. So we do expect to have more in the next few weeks as well. The contract, it's loosely called the contract, is for 1 year. So every January they'll be able to choose to renew or not. And then we'll continue to promote them if they choose to sign up again, or they can always change their minds if they don't want to. So it's not like in perpetuity. So all of these businesses will be our Perks Partners for 2025. So they're through December 31st.
That criteria. Is there any type of want to?
We have not set any limitations on it. So if the business feels like they can do 10% off of whatever it is somebody would be purchasing, then we will pretty much accept that. So we haven't set up any limitations that way. We were thinking mostly small businesses because larger, chains and franchises sometimes don't have the authority to give 10% off, but if they wanted to, by all means, and if they have that authority, then they're welcome to join as well.
All right. So lots going on at your library. I just wanted to, if nothing else, anybody from the public is turning to say there's lots going on here, but also just let you know the huge variety of items and ways we make a difference in the community.
Michael.
Yeah.
Thank you for that presentation. I really liked being able to hear these things. I heard a lot of things that aligned with the strategic plan. And I really appreciated that kind of look at here's how we're fulfilling the strategic plan. It would help me, and I think the board, to do an end of year review if we could get that in writing every month, or where however often you do it, quarterly.
I was planning on doing it every month. No, I will have a tactical plan update for you.
Mhm.
We have at this point checked off almost all the items on the tactical plan that you approved. And I simply haven't had a chance to fill those in for you. But I was planning on doing this on a monthly basis, and we'll happily just share. So what we do is we just say, all right, what's happening where you are? Tell me, give me 3-4 points. And then of course for admin, we fill that in too. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
Just that paper, but saying like strategic plan point and then like
sure.
grouping the things would be really helpful.
Okay, so I'll give you the tactical plan update next month. The tactical plan, you recall what we did is we took the strategic plan, we said, this is this year.
Mhm.
And so I will present that to you next month. I was hoping to do it this month, but I simply ran out of time before I could get it done. But we are looking at that tactical plan on a monthly basis. We review it and say, okay, what have we done? What needs to be done? What can we not do this year?
Mhm.
Thank you. I will make sure that you
Yeah.
get that update.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to note again, I think that really underscores the value of doing that strategic plan and breaking it down into tactical, because it's very clear that you are shaping the decisions that the library is making based on that feedback from Library IQ.
It is 11:12. Shall I just plow on through? I mean, you didn't take a break, but
I'd be happy for a break.
all right. I don't think the other things that I have are going to take a lot of time.
Okay, can I have a motion for a 5-minute break?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, everybody back in 5 minutes.
How you feeling about that?
Used to it.
Okay.
Actually, we're signing up for some of them.
All right, Michael, ready to continue?
We did submit our budget request. It was due the last day that you met. And since then, we've had two things arise that we need to think about. The first is regarding LSTA money, the Library Service and Technology Act. That is money collected at the federal level, passed down to the states, and we have competitive grants that we apply for. So this year we've got $50,000 in those grants. Those are primarily for staff development, but they're also what is providing the Lexington Park makerspace equipment. You'll no doubt be aware that the incoming administration basically said, we're not going to have grants given away, and that was challenged in the courts, and that executive order is no longer in effect. So the money is in place for this year, and we'll continue to give that out. It's already been dispersed to the state of Maryland anyway, but we need to think about next year what happens if there are no such grants, and we simply don't know yet. We have plans in place if we don't get them, and those would involve basically pulling back on training and staff development. There would be no conferences, no conference attendance. We can get all kinds of free training, but that would have that as a ramification. And then we wouldn't be able to do maybe some small project like the Lexington Park Makerspace for this year. In the past, we've always done this kind of thing, and we've always had money. And that's what got our mobile library, for example. So we'll just have to look and see, but we know that that may not be coming through. So we'll just look and see what we'll have for next year in term, and we'll know probably come May if that funding is going to remain in place or not.
Sorry, what is LSTA?
Library Services and Technology Act is what that stands for. It's just a federal law through which that money is funneled down through the states.
Library Services and Technology Act.
Yes.
Okay, and it's federal.
And we
What agency is that coming from, Michael?
we love our acronyms. That comes through the IMLS, the Institute of Museum and Library Services. I'm sorry, John?
What is the overall agency from which that money flows,
Through the IMLS, the Institute of Museum and Library Services.
which has to be under somebody else?
It's its own government institute or agency. I will say that in the previous years of the Trump administration, the budget put forward was that it should be defunded, but that Congress always voted its funding to continue and in fact increased its funding. So we'll just have to wait and see what's going to be going on with that.
Thank you.
The other is that legislation has been proposed in Maryland to raise the minimum wage from $15 to $20. And we don't know about legislation at this point. If I were a betting person, I'd say maybe this is not the year it's going to go through. But it would be unfunded for us. They're not going to give us additional money. So we'll need to just wait and see. Again, I don't think that legislation is going to pass this year, but it has been proposed. So we need to think about what that would mean for the future, because not only do our lowest paid employees go from 15 to 20, but then there's compression on top of that. Currently, our entry level frontline staff are making right about that. And so if the pages go up to that, what are we going to have to do with that level? Because they've got more responsibility. We'll wait and see. I don't think that legislation is going to be passing this year. It's a tough budget year. But those are two things that we are going to be watching for you and just making sure that we are planning for. I did go this past Tuesday up to Annapolis and met with our legislators for Library Legislative Day. There's a proclamation, and then we all go just going to talk to our our legislators about what's going on and try to get their sense of what's important for them, not just for libraries, but overall. And I really done a nice day talking with them, and they're all very gracious. And it's a really kind of fun day. So I always say, you want to go up, and nobody ever takes me up on it. But next year, maybe come meet with your legislators.
Did go in a snowstorm, Michael.
It was a bit of fun driving back in the snowstorm, I will say. About 2 o'clock, I was finished up there and driving back through the snow and saying, "Oh, this is fun." I did send you out, and it's in your packet, the bills that have to do specifically with library legislation. I will say that there's kind of 4 that we're particularly interested in. The Deaf Culture Digital Library, they create resources for people who are hard of hearing. And so they have devices that allow people to see content, and especially to transcribe movies and videos that may not otherwise be viewable. So they share and they provide program staffs and visits. So that would have a fiscal note attached to it. And what we're told up there is anything that has a fiscal note may not go through this year, but we'll see. The Family Literacy Pilot Program, we're already doing that a little bit here in Southern Maryland, but what happens is that people who are incarcerated, they get a book, they are allowed to be videoed, and they read the book. And then at home, their children get a copy of the book, and they can see that and read along with the parent. And the idea is to reduce recidivism, to make that family connection, maybe to help some young people choose a better path in life and promote literacy. So we're hoping that maybe that program will get established. The State Library Resource Center, they're the ones who give us our databases. So those costs are going up. This is a real bargain. So they provide both the schools and the libraries. For example, the Gale databases, the newspaper articles, the magazine articles, resources that are quality for people to do research on papers. And there's any number of things. And they pay about $600,000 a year for the whole state. If all of us had to individually buy those, it would be over $4 million. So because of that sort of power of purchasing at a state level, we're asking for no funding increase this year, upcoming year for that. But in the future, some amounts that were already slated to come into effect, about $2.07 per capita. So we're not talking a whole lot of money for any of these here. So we're just kind of hoping that maybe that one will happen as well. And then there's funding for the Maryland State Library. And they do so very much for us. There are several bills that probably are not really of any real interest to us. One is the Automated External Defibrillator Program, which would say that libraries have to have AEDs and have to have staff who are trained them. We already do. And I think most Maryland libraries do. Some of these are just bills that are in search of, they're sort of, one thing happened one time, so somebody puts a bill in and they don't stop and think, we don't really need that. I think I think Commissioner Morgan, Todd Morgan told me there were there's over 2,400 bills submitted this year. So a lot of them just will never see the light of day. Another one that we don't think will see the light of day is probably going to be individuals experience homelessness address requirements. It would prohibit libraries from discriminating against the homeless and having to provide the unhoused with library cards. We already do it. We have a workaround there. So again, some of these things come forward. We just don't think that we care one way or another, and they're not likely to pass. So the kind of ones we're interested in, some small funding increase for agencies that do provide us with services here in county. We'll see. Again, I'm getting the sense that anything that would require a funding increase this year is going to have a hard time getting through. And we'll just have to kind of wait and see where we are with those. We don't anticipate a funding cut for public libraries. Currently in the governor's budget that he submitted, there's a small increase that was already in Maryland code. And it will give us for next year about an additional $24,000. I mean, if you think of our whole budget, that's not a lot, but every little bit will be welcome. So we're not expecting a funding cut at this point from the state for libraries. The budget's not completely settled yet. We'll keep you updated, but so far I think we're feeling pretty good about what's happening in terms of library funding, even in a tough year.
Do you have a date yet for our budget hearing? You go present.
Yeah, I will give you, I can do it right now. So here's what's happening with our budget hearing. I'll be going to all of the budget work sessions because they're very interesting to hear. And they also, when you have some sense, this person's getting that and of what it might mean for us. On February 25th, the budget for the school board is going to be reviewed, Board of Education. On March 4th, the elected officials request, that's your circuit court, orphans court, sheriffs, and state's attorneys' budgets get reviewed. On, let's see, March 11th, they'll having a discussion of the county departments, what county agencies will get, and compensation for county employees. The one we care about most is March 18th. That'll be at 1:30 in the afternoon in the Chesapeake Building. State agencies, nonprofits, and final balancing for recommended budget for public hearing. That's when we are, for some reason, considered a state agency, even though we're a component unit of the county. That's when our hearing is going to be.
March 18th.
March 18th, 1:30. These are all open to the public. You're welcome to go sit in them. I warn you ahead of time that it can be a slog. But I always go just to, and I usually send you an update the next day on what's going on with that. Our budget hearing is then, we are now in the process of releasing requests to our supporters to write letters to the commissioners. And last year we actually got more letters in support of the library than the schools. So we know it's a tough budget year. The schools have pretty much already asked, by the time you throw in the amount that's already earmarked for emergency services, for whatever increase there is. It's going to be a competitive and tough year. I don't anticipate the library getting any fewer funds. But I don't know if we're going to be getting an increase or not. We're talking to the commissioners and asking. We have submitted a budget request. 2 years ago, they did promise to try to make up for a funding gap that appeared from 2017 through about 2020. And the first year of that, they kept their promise. They did a great job. Sorry. Spam. But this year we're in now, obviously there wasn't a lot of money on the table, but even so, we got the largest percentage of increase of anybody other than the sheriff's department. So they have been fulfilling their promise. We really can't complain, but it would be nice to be getting a little bit more money, and we're talking to them about what our highest needs are. If you should happen to see a county commissioner, you might want to say, hey, remember your library. And then, so what's going to happen is our staff usually just ask people who come to the library, here's a worksheet. Would you please consider supporting us? The friends get that. The foundation members will be asked to write letters. If you want to write a letter in support of that, we can get you that information. So we will know then on March 25th what they're recommending the library get. We will have until April 22nd to do an appeal of that. April 22nd is the public hearing. And then there's a comment period after the public hearing when we can really try to get our supporters out if we need to until May 6th. And that's when they sort of present the final budget. So there's your sort of things upcoming, and we're going to hope we get a lot of letters written. It's certainly not going to hurt us to let the county commissioners know that we have a lot of support. And as I told you last month, I believe in their own survey of county services that they did last June, the library was first, head and shoulders of everybody else, the next one being parks. We've got a lot of people who really love the library here, so I hope that they're going to keep that in mind when they allocate funding. We know it's a tough year.
So that worksheet, and support, could you just maybe email it to all of us? I think we should.
Yeah,
all
sure.
see it.
Laura has already got that. So, yeah.
Familiar with it.
Yeah.
So we can have those elevator conversations.
I think that is it. We do have a couple of action items for you. The first is the work rules policy update, and you have that in your packet. And it is very few changes. Those were marked for you.
They didn't print out, so I can give you what they are.
They didn't print out. I highlighted them in red.
It didn't print out. So
Okay, sorry about that. I highlighted them in red and apparently they didn't print. There's very few changes. Go ahead and review those if you would.
So on number 18, we removed the word any before all. It was just an extra word in there. And right now it looks like there's no space, so that'll be fixed. And then on number 27, we added accurately clock in and out for every shift and to that work rule. That's what we added. Because with Paylocity, we now require our staff to clock in and out. And for number 28, we added the word and after updates. And we removed update their time cards after email because that is reflected in number 27. So, and then on number 29, we added employees are required to work at least 2 outreach events per calendar year unless otherwise noted in their job description. Additional outreach is encouraged. And then we tweaked the last sentence to read the events must consist of at least 2 hours. So we used to require all staff to do 1 outreach a year. Now we're requiring 2 because we're doing more outreach.
Did you note the typo? in
Yes.
Line
Yes,
3?
there's a space missing there and also in 28. So those they are, you know, with the track changes, you can't always tell that there's a space missing. So I fixed it.
So as a relatively minor things and nothing that really affects operations at a large level.
So
yeah.
I move to approve these changes to the work rules.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Judith. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, sorry.
On number 5.
I'm new with this
That's-
gig.
I'm sorry. That's pending, like if they are, it's an emergency situation or they're hospitalized and can't get in contact with you. I'm sure that's part of that overall.
Yeah, that's not, we're not putting any changes in there, but yes, we go out of our way to make sure that our employees are treated fairly. So if it's an emergency situation, you know, someone's hospitalized, they can't communicate with us, obviously, we're going to factor that in. It's not a.
Just to be clear, if our employee doesn't show up after like an hour, we're calling them. We're checking on our employees at all times. We've even called to have a a welfare check on an employee who we couldn't get in touch with within a few hours. So we are always, we're not just letting 2 days pass without trying to figure out what's going on.
We are doing reach out, and we have emergency contact numbers if necessary. So we are very proactive about making sure everybody's okay.
But we've had at least 2 employees who did not come to work. We couldn't get a hold of anyone. And we just had to assume that they were not wanting to come back.
Do you ever get a hold of them?
Nope.
No.
So actually.
No, that worked
now
out.
now that you say that, I'm looking at the 2 consecutive days. Maybe it should be consecutive shifts because you could be scheduled for work on Monday and then on Wednesday and not show up for either one. That's not 2 consecutive days. They could say, I cannot show up on Monday, not show up on Wednesday, come in on Thursday. I haven't hit the 2 consecutive days.
Would you like them to approve that
Would it
change?
be 2,
It's
would that
two-
make sense? 2 consecutive
Yes,
shifts?
yes, yes. That makes sense. And it's true.
Yeah.
So we can write that in if you will add it to the approval of this right now.
Just didn't want to get that out.
Sure.
Move to approve as amended.
Okay.
Second.
Any other discussions, questions? All in favor?
Hi.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, the next item is we're looking ahead for the summer at interns. And in the past, as you all know, the board has provided out of the funds that were established many, many years ago, an intern. So we're asking you to do that again. And the cost was $2,700. You have a packet? All right.
Yeah.
So see if I can find that here.
3391.
Oh, there it is.
And that can fluctuate because sometimes our interns won't work the entire, they'll have a vacation in there somewhere. Sometimes they get all 10 weeks.
So 3391 from the funds that were established to provide an intern many years ago. So asking for that.
I thought I had brought this statement. So for the board, so we have around $16,000 in that fund right now. So this can be easily
How much? I'm sorry. Judith, how
about
much?
16,000.
16.
So this is,
A lot.
you said $2,700?
3391.
It's 3391 is the total now.
Can I clarify? Is this 30? Yeah,
We only
30.
You only pay for one.
Okay.
You only pay
You can see on this sheet, there's one for the Library Board of Trustees, the foundation, the FOL, and then the library itself pays for one.
Yes, so we have around 16,000 and change. So
So can I have a motion to approve funding 1 intern for the summer?
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Sharon.
Second.
Second. Thank you, Michael. Any discussion?
Only that, again, I think we need to take the long view here. At this rate, we got about 5 years worth of money.
I have a different question, and that's it's actually spending more money, but there's 21 hours a week for a summer job. Is there a reason why we don't give them more hours? I mean, it's
Well, that's 3 7-day shifts. And I would suppose that money is one of the reasons.
Yeah, money is one of the reasons. Also, we have multiple library assistants. 21-hour shift is a set standard shift for our part-time employees.
Yeah, so
Almost all of our library assistants that are part-time are 21 hours.
would you like to have them work more hours? That you-
Yes. Who's willing to pay? Who's willing to pay for that?
In the summer, trying to make money, saving up for college or something, and they've got 21 hours. Can they even juggle another job around that, or they're going for a second job?
well,
They-
we could do 28 4 days, but if you go above that, then you start looking at benefits. So
Mhm.
Yes.
It's based on hours.
Not if you make them a 1099 employee. Right.
We don't have 1099 employees at the moment.
And that's actually cheaper for us that we're now saving on payroll taxes. And there's no obligation to provide benefits.
Something that
So,
we
I mean, I
can,
don't think we can answer this today, but something to think about is you're gonna save money. On these payroll taxes. And these kids aren't earning enough. They're not gonna owe any money anyway.
So-
Any money they make, these teenagers, they're not gonna owe any federal or state taxes. Yes, you always have to pay social security,
there,
but even
the
that you
10
probably don't have to pay.
1099 employees do have to fit under certain standards and policies and what they do. I would need to research to see how an intern falls into that, whether or not they can be a 1099, because there are standards for 1099s. They have to have certain reporting structure or non-reporting structure. And some of that is that I need to look it up again, but I believe one of them is that 1099 has to be able to do their job on their own, and our interns can't do that. So but I need to look up those specific rules, and I can come back with that at another time.
I believe, doesn't that also make them liable for paying
Yes.
their own social security, which is
Yes.
They
huge.
don't.
They do, if it's over $400.
What?
So I worked as a 1099 employee. If I earned over $400, it was a 30% tax rate. So
On
it
Social
would,
Security.
yeah,
Yeah. Then
Social Security is like 7.5%.
it was 30% when I was working as a 1099 employee. So I would hesitate to do that because of the benefit to
the
the
reason
employees.
the reason is
Yeah.
because it's 7.65% for the employee and for the employer. So it's a total, like you're doubling, and you're also asking 20-year-olds to file their own taxes on a 1099.
It's not hard on, you're right online and do it, so. I'm just tossing out some ideas here.
I'll look it up.
So I just don't know, and I mean, I kind of feel for these kids trying to make money in the summer. And, but I would have to bring in this statement and really look at what we have and how much we want to spend in a year, and.
We also really want to treat our interns very well and include them as staff because they so often become our staff.
How many is it? 6 now?
Yeah.
Is this 3391 about what we paid this past summer's intern?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I didn't actually have to change it at all because it's the minimum wage. So it's minimum wage, and minimum wage was $15 an hour last year also. So until minimum wage goes up, or we decide to pay the interns more. So that's the other option, Judith, not giving them more hours, but giving them more pay. But our pages make 15, and they also, so somewhere between 15 and 19, because our frontline staff make 19.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I do think, I mean, I fully support this. I do think that if the Rudolph is down to 16K, then we need to kind of think about, do we want to pull, what are we going to do in 5 years? Well, from Vanguard, pay is only going to go up, and none of us want to see this program end. So we got to figure that out.
But since this account was established specifically for paying an intern until it's getting ready to be exhausted, we have to just pay it out of that.
Well,
Yeah.
one thing
And then we can revisit.
Well, I mean, we can supplement it from the budget. I don't think we're at that point of doing that, but the Rudolph can only be used for interns.
Right.
And I believe it has to be used for interns every year. at least
It does, but you would have discretion, and I've shared a number of documents with you from the past. You would have discretion in the future to say, we're going to continue to support this from other funds, or you could simply say, okay, the Rudolph fund is now exhausted. You're not committed to, once it is, to going beyond that.
No, it's
That's a
not.
good point.
So, if in 5 years you say, okay, that's that, you could say, all right, we're no longer going to be funding an intern. But another piece of the puzzle is entered in that It used to be that if a donation came into the library and it wasn't earmarked, it came to the board. Now we've got a foundation, and that's where people are giving their money. So the foundation has voted in the past to do an intern. So it could be that in 5 years, the foundation could cover that as instead. That would be up to the foundation. They're a separate agency, but right now you've kind of lost that ability to grow your fund.
That was exacerbated by putting it in a bond fund as opposed to a growth fund.
Not really any growth, yeah.
With a 5-year horizon, if we started growth contributions right now, might be a whole different picture 5 years from now.
But I think it's something that, yeah, we're looking at some of this and hope to present something in April on both funds, on like where we are and where we're going and purpose and mission and all that kind of stuff, and get a better handle on it.
Well, so there's a motion and a second on the table to fund it at 3391.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstained?
Thank you so much. And other than what? I have no idea what is going on. Okay, I will check my network settings later. That's what I have for you for today. I will turn it back over to Tressa for old or new trustee business.
All right, so we're back at talking about the OPEB fund. And thank you, John, for sending the information.
Welcome.
So just open it up for discussion.
Well, first thing, I think we ought to start with where we stand with our chat with Asset Strategies today.
That was something.
Should we be in private session?
You cannot be. That is not that is not something that is covered under St. Mary's more restrictive Open Meetings Act. You cannot be to discuss this in a closed session.
I mean, we already voted in December to part with asset strategy, so I, for one, don't want to rehash any of that information. If we're moving on, I think we need to focus on the future.
I think the two things that we were looking at is which fund, where we wanted to go and how to go there. So it's kind of the where and the how, and then how moving forward. So because what we need, in my opinion, what we need to do is whatever we do, it needs to be like a blueprint so that future boards can see exactly what occurred. There's nothing opaque about it, because we're not all going to be here. I mean, boards change over, library staff changes over. And so I'd like to, since we've already voted to get rid of asset strategy and move on from that, we still are responsible for this funding. But it is an organization, it's not a people. So my thought is, how can we put it in a name that's the organization, so it stays with the organization? That's a question I have. I mean, I'm going to admit I'm way out of my wheelhouse when it comes to reading all this asset strategy stuff and looking at scattered things and whatever. My mind just is scattered about it. But we have to, whatever we do, it has to be thoughtful, and it has to be something that can move on from us so that future boards can see what we did and where it needs to go, and the responsibility for it.
Well, let me see, since I've worked on this, let me see if I can boil it down into bite-sized nuggets. I think it distills down to us looking at two different fund options. One of them is a Vanguard Wellington. The other one is with American Funds Balanced Fund. If you threw both of them up against the wall and dissected them, they're close to being twins, so no real difference there. So here's where the twins get separated. Vanguard is cheaper to run than the American Balance Fund. Okay. The offset is that our dealings with Vanguard, from setup to whatever we do downstream with them, is by long distance. With American funds, we can go to any broker locally that handles them. We have enough money that we would not be paying a sales charge. They are more expensive to operate. Key there in that differentiation is you do not, since we have enough money to avoid sales charges, you do not want to get hooked up with a fee-based firm. Okay? So where I'm coming from, the real trade-off to me is the convenience of local contacts versus a much lower operating cost with Vanguard. Roughly 0.26 with them, 0.57, if I remember right, over here with American. A little bit of a heavy lift paper-wise going with Vanguard, but once we step through that, we just tell our friends at Asset Strategies, liquidate everything, and the money goes over to this account at Vanguard.
My thought on that, given the two, is today we're in such a virtual world. I don't know that it's really that much of an advantage to have a person here if it's going to cost us more to run the fund. I just don't see the advantage to that.
One more thing, came out in the news last week that Vanguard's reducing its fees on over 100 of its funds. I didn't get in to see if Wellington has one of those funds, and their long-term goal is to eliminate the fees. So their money will come simply from the transactions they gain, and they want to go to literally a no-fee environment. That's their long-term strategy. That's what they're saying that they put out, but they did reduce fees on like 150 some other funds. So if it wasn't Wellington, hopefully that will happen eventually.
Okay, now for the real story.
Okay.
The reduction was 1 basis point. So 27.27 goes to 0.26. Okay. Second thing, take any reporting that says they're going to do it for free. That's a lie, because unless your firm or your broker is walking to work and he's naked, he's getting paid somehow, some way. It may not be obvious, but the pay is there. And that's the same with firms like Vanguard. They have huge volume. They can reduce their operating costs. That's fine, but they cannot operate for free. So I guess the bottom line on my comment is the general press basically is the last place you want to look for any news regarding financial matters.
Well, I mean, even if it's the 0.01 basis,
It's still better than 0.57. Yeah.
So, Asset Trader is going to want to hear back from you. What I'm going to tell them, but please make sure that I've got it right, is you're not making a decision at this time. Leave things alone. And you then need to make a decision about the fund overall.
I think that's fair.
So we also, in addition to the two options that we've come down to, is the how.
I was just looking at the notes that John sent about how that would look, and I liked the very clear walkthrough that you gave about we're going to open this account, we're going to direct this way, we're going to have this sold and held in cash and then transferred and that sort of thing. I think there's some details there we can work out about whose name and who's doing those things. But one thing that I didn't see on here is after that, who is it, a board member who becomes responsible for printing out the quarterly reports? Or is that going to be an additional ask of the library staff? Or like, how do we continue to to observe and manage that account? And who's going to be responsible to make any allocation changes or anything like that?
Can I make a point here too? Also, to be clear, the library must have access to the statements because our accountants update QuickBooks with those. They get them quarterly also from me. And that is why at the moment I have access to them. They must have access quarterly to account statements for the budget and for our audit and all of that.
And if you
They
know,
don't have access. You mean you have access and you give them the statements?
Yes.
Somebody in the organization has to have access so we can.
but also note if who's on the account now, it is a library account. It is not a trustee account. And I think it should stay that way, but I think it would be fine if a trustee were on the account as well.
Well, my recommendation on that is, and this is subject to any weird rules that Vanguard has. The name on the account is the library. What we're really talking about here is who's authorized to quote, operate the account. Now, to get back to Sharon's question, there are no, as long as we're in a balance type fund, there are going to be no questions about allocation. We don't have any control over that.
Okay,
All that's done down inside the fund itself.
perfect.
And they'll make tweaks and maybe we notice them or see them, maybe we don't.
Mhm.
Okay. But my recommendation from a responsibility standpoint, my recommendation would be that we have the treasurer being a responsible person and one
Your
about who can operate. What's to operate? It's fire and forget.
Well, it needs the account, in my opinion, needs to be the organization, so that's the library. And a library person needs to be in it, Belinda already currently is. Right now, we have our treasurer's account, the other Vanguard account, that we have to change now who can get in it, because right now I still have access. I have to get Judith access into it. It's not a completely simple process. I understand it now better than what I did. So it is doable, but it it takes time. It takes 6 to 8 weeks to make that change.
And that's been initiated.
I get with her.
And also that's going to happen every year. We go every year for a new treasurer. So we won't
The whole
necessarily.
idea of a long-term trustee is problematic because it's dependent upon the county commissioner's appointments. So Judith, just to give you an example, we took over somebody's term. You could be on the board for 14 years. You could be a very long-term trustee. On the other hand, you might say, you might say at the end of your first term, no, I'm done. So I think that, yeah.
Any of us tomorrow.
Yeah, so.
To do it, I'd be okay. I really don't think the access to the accountants is a big deal. If you needed the state, say for some reason you weren't on a bulletin, you need it, you email me, I download the statement, I send it to you. I mean, we're in the electronic world where getting access to the information is instantaneous. You don't have to be in the room with anybody. You don't need to be there. We just download and send off the statements. So, I mean, I'd be okay with a trustee and a library employee. And that way I think we might have a little balance.
But wouldn't it,
one from each organization.
wouldn't it make just as much sense though to keep it as it's named now on the Schwab account? It has Belinda and Michael's name on it, and then a trustee like the other Vanguard account. The treasurer is what we changed to go in and take a look at the Vanguard account, which is also goes to the library, even though that's more of our responsibility. But that way it stays, the name stays with the library.
John, if what you're saying, John, what you're saying is that there's really not going to be any management of the account.
Oh, they're doing it all.
Yeah, it's sort of like, so in some ways, it doesn't even matter whose name is on it. If the library owns the account, who has access, we can set up in multiple ways.
Yeah.
So I don't even know that matters in terms of
Yeah,
who's going to
that's
manage
true.
the fund.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Yeah.
really whoever's gonna have the password.
Yeah, all we have to do is say, here's the login, here's the person who has access to the login.
So could we do it this way? Yeah, it's gonna be called the St. Mary's County OPEB Trust or
Yeah.
whatever we call it. And I'm just kind of spitballing here, have a library employee on it, but in our policies, we say a board member to be determined every year,
The treasurer, yeah.
access, password and full access to the account along with like one board member, one library employee will have access to it. And whatever we put, on the mailer,
Yeah.
kind of who cares? But I would make a policy of, and decide it every year because the person might not want to do it anymore. There might be changes or something like that. Same thing as we vote in the members, the officers, and just say, we'll vote access to the fund for the purpose of,
Yeah, whoever has the login, sure.
I mean, that person would also conceivably make transactions. Like if we had a deposit or a withdrawal, those two people can get access to the funds. So we want to make sure we document that.
Well, and that is true to the extent that we dump some money in there. You didn't want it to sit in cash. They have to know that it's supposed to be applied to the fund itself. That's a buy order you gave them.
What do you mean they?
They, Wellington or whoever.
Yeah, I mean, you would go online, do the online transaction. And I think preceding that would be any transactions as we do now, and we don't even have this documented, is the board votes on any transactions, either deposits or withdrawals. We don't have any documentation how we run this show right now. We've been managing to do it for 15 years. So, but I think we probably should memorialize, I think, set up the fund, vote, set up the fund, and they get these little procedural things written out to we can smooth them out. Sometimes you have to go through the steps.
So is that a motion to do that now?
I do have one more
Yeah, okay,
question
yeah, sure.
that I didn't see answered, and maybe it got answered already. Have we looked into any tax liabilities or problems with cashing out and then repurchasing? There's no problems
No,
there?
we have none.
Okay.
No. We don't pay taxes. Correct? No capital.
No, we do not pay taxes.
Okay. So because it's under the library's name, it wouldn't be subject to federal capital gain?
Right.
Okay.
So then can we vote today on which account we want to move towards, and then we can kind of work on policy language about who has access and those kinds of
Right, because remember, when we vote to move to the new fund, say we do, then we need to give asset strategy 30 days notice.
Correct.
Which anybody in this room could do. I think we just need to send them an email and say, thank you for your service, but the board has decided to move in a different direction and expect to hear something in 30.
I send them emails. I will happily take that on. When
and they'll
when
do
you've got the fund established, we need to have that done first.
Right, so we can vote, notify them. And then in 31 days, we can go online and get this fund set up and start the transaction moving along. And we can start, smoothing out these wrinkles of some procedure.
Yeah, so for today, can we have an initial vote on which of the two we want to move forward with, so then we can narrow down on what steps we have to take to create that? Does that sound reasonable?
So I would move that we select Vanguard Wellington.
I would second that.
Any discussion? All in favor of Vanguard Wellington, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Okay, so we chose Vanguard Wellington.
Congratulations.
Okay. So just a procedural question. Don't you have to have that account established? Somebody has to say to Vanguard Wellington, here we come, before we say to asset strategy, goodbye.
Yes,
So that's your next step.
And John has that really nicely documented in the document that he
Just
sent.
making sure. Okay.
And that's why I believe they're going to get an electronic notice from Vanguard saying we're coming in to get these funds, and we set the account, authorize the transaction. It's done electronically.
Well, you got to remember this now. We need the pull to be a pull of cash, but the whole thing is cash. We don't want to have any securities trying to transfer over, because that's a whole different headache over at Vanguard.
Okay, well, on April 8th, it is National Library Week, and that Tuesday morning, the county commissioners are going to be giving the library a proclamation. So if you want to come out for that, I will give you advance notice of that, but just letting you know that we've already got that set up with the county. And
Dorothy, another chance to shine.
and they have not. I do have some sad news, but I believe I shared it with you. A long-term member of the board, Janice Waldhauer, her husband, has passed away. So please remember Janice in your prayers or your thoughts as you see fit. And there's memorial services upcoming Monday at 9:30 at St. Peter Clavier Church down there in Ridge. So Janice has just been an incredible force for this library and for the county at large. So do remember Janice.
Do we have funds to send flowers memorial? Is that allowable? I mean, I would totally approve that if we needed to. I'm not
All
sure.
right, well, we will arrange for that then.
I think that would be nice.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
From the
What was their last
library
name?
staff and board of trustees.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, I think you need to close the meeting then.
All right. Can I have a motion to close our meeting today and our meeting?
Move to adjourn.
Michael, second. John, was that a second?
That was a second.
All right, all in favor? So,
You're gonna have to take a vote on that one. Thank you so much for your service to the library. It is greatly appreciated. Got lots done today and got some fun updates. Happy Valentine's Day to all. Let's go have an enjoyable afternoon.